Steve Felano. Steve, how are you, sir? Appreciate you calling in. Steve is a Second Amendment expert, and part of, I guess I don't know how to say this, but part of the lawsuit that we're trying to help with, our attorney James Ostrowski trying to push this thing through. You and I were talking the other day about the Hogan-Willig lawsuit and really the outcome of that, at least the first round of it, and really disappointing, Steve, right?
Yes, Mike, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes, a very disappointing outcome. I think overall, the vast majority of the lawsuits brought against the Cuomo regime with respect to his pandemic response, the outcome with the courts at the state level and the federal level have been fairly disappointing.
Yeah, it actually trying to comb through that as a team, it really almost gives him unlimited power anytime there's emergency, but it doesn't really define what an emergency is, right? I mean, now it's COVID, but what if it's something else 6 months from now, 12 months from now, or 2 years from now?
Right, and I think that's one of the major concerns that I have and a range of liberty activists across the state and beyond have. The definition of what an emergency is, really is not crystal clear. We've in effect had the state ruled over by a single dictator for more than 7 months now. You're right, this could be reinvoked really at any time that the legislature sees fit to again give up its authority under the state constitution and illegally pass power over to Cuomo. That could be due to something like concerns over climate change, quote unquote, American modern gun violence, any litany of issues, racial tensions. Any type of pretext could trigger something like this again if we ever get out of this type of one-man rule in the foreseeable future.
Well, that's true if we get out to begin with, right? I mean, let's not forget that most of the legislation that's passed at the state level is done under emergency orders, right, or whatever they want to call it. They call an emergency whatever so they can bypass the rules of posting it to the public. That's how they got the SAFE Act through to begin with, was to pass it in the dead of night at 2 o'clock in the morning. They abuse that already. What's to say they're not going to continue to abuse this? I'm guessing that they will.
That's correct. And another sort of sidestep that we see the legislature and the governor take with respect to passing dubious legislation is to simply include it as part of the state budget, which is another thing that happened this year. The budget was ushered through in an emergency session because of the whole COVID pandemic and the reluctance of the legislature to meet once again. And there were some other gun control edicts packaged within that budget and a range of other things, too, such as cuts to education and other state services that I think people would find a bit unpopular that the governor was able to force through. I think that what you're going to see and what you have seen is the governor, frankly, likes these emergency powers because it allows him to paper over a range of deficiencies that pre-existed COVID, such as state essentially bankrupt before COVID came along. Well, now COVID is a convenient excuse for the mismanagement of the state's finances, other issues relative to coming up and funding the pension liabilities for teachers. Well, he can blame his inability to do that on COVID. It really creates a very convenient excuse to be able to, not deliver on a range of promises to the left and continue to harass the right on a range of issues as well.
Yeah, Steve.
One thing I don't think they did cut was their own pensions and salaries.
Oh,
right?
no.
I don't think a single legislator, they haven't now everybody, bar owners, restaurateurs, small business owners, they've all had to go without paychecks. Not, gym owners not being able to open their business. Do you know if any legislator has given back their paycheck or taken a pay cut in any way, shape, or form, Steve?
Well, no. I mean, this specific legislative year, they all got raises. I know at least the governor specifically got a raise. He's the, Andrew Cuomo is the highest paid governor in the nation.
Yeah. And our legislators are the highest paid legislators in the nation. Almost $100,000, if not more now, of income. When most places are a part-time basis, like Nebraska, I think they pay their legislators like $20,000 a year.
I have to shake my head, Steve, and say, what was this judge thinking? How do you not look at what he's doing and say this is an abuse of power and it's totally unconstitutional? I don't understand.
Right. Yeah, I think that unless and until there's a very clear, I guess, in the judge's eye, abuse of power that's nakedly, and I mean like extremely nakedly political on the part of the governor, you're going to be hard-pressed to find someone in the Western District or the Northern District, any federal district that covers New York State, that is going to reverse these orders, is going to declare them unconstitutional, that is basically going to deconstruct the made-up framework by which the governor can rule over the state without legislative oversight.
They seem to be, in other states, we seem to be winning lawsuits, right? I mean, you look at Michigan and Pennsylvania, right? I mean, some of those states are now being forced to open up because of that, but apparently not here in good old New York, huh?
Yes, in those other states, you are getting some successful injunctions. They don't appear to be something that totally takes out at the knees the framework by which those other governors can issue these executive orders and potentially, continue with one-person rule. But yeah, even in New York State, you're really not seeing many injunctions issued. I know there was one issued with respect to basically a prohibition on free speech for bar owners to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and publicize that we have a music act in our bar, which was an idiotic regulation that the state liquor authority was promulgating, and that the liquor authority is continuing to try to litigate and win. But I know that they were slapped down by the courts, and there have been a couple of other limited victories. But I guess the silver lining at this point is if you look at the federal circuits, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals is majority Trump appointees now, and majority conservatives. And then if you look at the Supreme Court, of course, the U.S. Supreme Court, very strong conservative majority there as well. So if this continues into 2021, and it probably will in some way, shape, or form, perhaps we can get some relief at those levels, and then potentially, free some of these other communist states that aren't not just New York, but some of the others that suffer under this type of thing as well.
So you're saying there's a chance?
We'll see. I mean, one of the announcements that 2A NYS, my group, will be making next week is the fact that Jim Ostrowski, the attorney we work with in my organization, we're going to be drafting a petition for certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court on a case that's about 6 years old right now that focuses on the unconstitutional nature of the state pistol permitting regime, and we're seeking to reverse that regime right now. We were ruled against in the Second Circuit, even amid a full hearing with all the Trump appointees, so we plan to petition the court for that review, and we think, frankly, the conservative wing would be interested in taking another gun case from New York because of how poorly they were treated last time around when they had a gun case this past session. And, of course, I think Amy Coney Barrett would side with our view on things. So, yeah, I do think that there's a chance, although it's probably fairly far off in the future, measured in several years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, Steve,
Thanks, Steve.
I want to have you on as a regular guest here as much as we possibly can. So I really appreciate you calling in. I'll be in touch with you on Monday, and the more Glenn and I can help you, we're going to try to do whatever we can to support you for sure.
Keep up the good work. Appreciate it.